Hello and welcome to today's episode of Platinum Talks Wealth. Emmy-nominated journalist Jennifer Rogers Markwell changed gears in her television career when she realized the need to help women make sense of investing. She regularly hosts educational workshops to empower women and others to take charge of their financial future. Now, join your host, Platinum Wealth Management President Jennifer Rogers Markwell, as she leads us into the world of money memories, money infidelities, and how these can mold our relationship with our personal finances as adults. Let's dive into today's episode.
Hi, and thanks for spending some time with us. It's Jennifer Rogers Markwell, and you're joining us on the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast. Today, we're joined by Sue Colina. Sue, thank you for making time.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, of course. So tell us all about who you are and why you do what you do.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Well, I'm an executive headhunter. I've been a recruiter for 20 years in Reno, Nevada. I grew up in New York and New England, near New York City, and moved here to Nevada 20 years ago. And in that migration, I fell into my industry. I fell into this profession in my early 30s. So I went to a staffing agency, an employment agency, to find a position, new to town. This was 2004. And they saw that I had a sales background and among other things like accounting and so forth, and said, "Would you like to be a recruiter?" Which was a profound time in my life. So I took the chance. They trained me. I was a high performer, went to president's clubs and top 5 in the nation and all of those things. I had great mentors. Recruiting is a language of love for me. I was a linguistic student in college. I wanted to be a translator. I never did materialize that path, but I think recruiting is like translating. You're translating between the job seeker and the hiring manager, the company. And there's a lot of nuances there that require a lot of transparency and ethic. You're dealing with people's income, their self-esteem, their titles, their security. And then the companies are dealing with their own insecurities about potentially hiring the wrong person or bringing the wrong person onto their team. And so a lot of anxiety in this type of job. And so what we do as recruiters is we're really psychiatrists, psychologists along the way. And I love it. And it's been very successful. And I've been out on my own in my own firm for 8 years and have 3 partners that join me. So we're doing great.
It's awesome. So I guess the question would be, I'm sure for a lot of folks listening or watching, like, what does that mean exactly? Like, is it just the person that's looking for a job? Like, how do you help people along the way? What does that look like? But then what's the person who should reach out that potentially would get a recruiter? Because I'm sure people are like, I don't even know if I need that, or do I need that, or what does that even mean?
Right. Very good question. Hiring companies, employers are our clients, and they are the ones that pay the invoice to find top talent. And they will come to us either on their own through referrals. A lot of our growth is organic and relationship driven. And they'll come to us with a position they've been trying to recruit for, and they can't find the right talent. At the same time, job seekers are coming to us through the other door, looking to see if we might have a career position that would fit for them. So our company does placement in finance and accounting, engineering, HR, IT, operations, sales and marketing, pretty much any field, any position in corporate America that's $50,000 in salary for a junior level person up to 200 or 350,000 for a C level. So they come to us through various means. We do post our jobs on the various platforms like LinkedIn and Indeed and so forth. And job seekers come to us that way. Good many come through referrals from other people we've placed in the past or other people that have hired from us in the past. And our process is to advocate for our job seekers. We put them through a screening process. We know their skills, we know the whole history, and we know their goals, their strengths, their requirements, and we play matchmaker. It's almost like dating. It's almost like setting up a friend to meet with your cousin, you know, and you just don't know how it's going to go. So there's a lot of project management in this work where you're kind of herding cats, you know, into the same tunnel or funnel, and yet there's a lot of you know, leave it up to universe and the people involved to represent themselves properly and so forth. So a lot of chemistry that takes place in a job search for a professional. You know, you're looking for a new boss, you're looking for more income, you're looking for the right culture, and the same thing for the hiring companies. So that's pretty much the overview. And we love our clients and candidates. It's like you're talking to your own sibling, helping if it was your brother, or your sister, or your dear friend, helping them land a new career path.
And you've shared with me offline of how you kind of ended up in this career path as well, but from a previous career. Would you be open to kind of sharing that as well? Because you started in finance
Yeah.
at one point.
Yeah, so early in my 20s, I left college. I didn't finish. There's a long story about that, but my parents had a family business and we sold accounting software to physicians. And their territory was all of New York, all of New England, down to New York City. And for 8 consecutive years, the top performers in the company in terms of sales and revenue. So I worked for them during that time, and I got to travel around New England, New York, wear a suit. I was 22 years old, you know, and I sold this accounting software. I installed it. I trained these physician practices, and it was quite eye-opening. Through that, I ended up working in accounting. I ran a physician office for 5 years after that, which led me into corporate accounting, which I really hate. I really, I'm terrible with numbers. I was an art and language student. So when I ended my life in Connecticut right before I moved to Nevada, I was a senior accountant for an HMO. And when I moved here, I started with Morgan Stanley. I took my Series 7, all the exams and tests, and passed them by the skin of my teeth. And I worked as a financial advisor, just as you are in wealth management. And I was not as successful as you are as building a book of business. So after a year, I decided to hang up my efforts and I went to an employment agency to find a job in accounting reluctantly. And what I learned was salaries were $20,000 less in Reno than what I had been making in Connecticut. And I thought, wow, I can't take a cut like that. And in that process, they hired me as a recruiter, which is a commission-based sales role. But my experience at Morgan Stanley was also very good training, good sales training, consultative sales training, taking care of people's finances, their portfolios, what you do. And you know, recruiting is very much like what you do. We're working with people's trust and relationships and have a high level of responsibility on things that are really critical, you know, wealth and income and careers. It's all, you know, it's all in that same category. So
Well, thank you for sharing. I feel like your journey is so interesting when you were sharing it to me the other day. And I was like, wow, that's so fascinating how you went from there into what you're doing now and, obviously helping people along the way completely.
thank you. Yeah, I don't know how I survived in accounting, to be honest with you. I couldn't get through a bank rec without talking to somebody.
I have heard that before. You're not the first to share that. Well, another thing we talk through here on the podcast are money memories. What is a money memory that you have from childhood or teenage years, or the first kind of money memory that you go to when you think about money and your relationship to money now as an adult?
Mm, good question. Yeah. Well, my first money memory, the first exchange of money came when my dog had puppies. My parents bred my black lab, Maggie, and we had 8 or 10 puppies. At the time, a purebred black lab was $250. Well, I had my favorite puppy, and we're not going to sell that puppy. I wanted to keep that puppy. I was 7 years old, and a little girl younger than me, 4 or 5, came with her parents to see the puppies one day, and she wanted my puppy. And I was hiding my puppy. I would hide her
Oh,
when people came to see the puppy. So anyway, my parents tried to convince me that $250 in a bank account was more important than the puppy. And I just didn't, that didn't sit with me. So money had very little value to me when I was really young. Over time, that changed completely. My grandmother once told me, when you're purchasing something, pay attention to whether it's something you want or something you need. And it doesn't mean you can't purchase it. Just make that association and identify whether this is something you want or you need. And that stuck with me my whole life. I think my most impactful financial memory had to do when I went away to boarding school. I went to a boarding high school for 3 years, a prep school. You know, you see movies about kids growing up in New England going to these, brick building prep schools. That was me. So my parents were a very middle class family, but I was surrounded by wealth. I was surrounded by a lot of high end folks, and that influenced me a great deal. um the It was something that I wanted. I wanted to work hard. I wanted to become successful. I wanted to have money in the bank. The summer after first year of college, I lived on Nantucket Island, which is very prestigious, like Martha's Vineyard.
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to the island, it would cost $50 to fly. It was a 15-minute flight on a small plane, or you could take the ferry for $15 and it takes 2 hours. Well, I flew. I wanted to go to the high end. So I flew there and I flew home. When I was there, I didn't have a job. And if you don't have a job coming to Nantucket in the summer of 1989, you're not going to find one. They bring a lot of people from Europe back in the restaurants and bagel shops and art galleries. So I kind of bummed around on the beach for a couple weeks, and then I got serious and I called every art gallery in the Yellow Pages. This was Yellow Pages time. This is
Nice.
before the internet. And I got through every one of them, called them all, told them I was an art student, I was looking for a job for the summer, and they were just nope, 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 nope. We already have somebody. And as I got desperate down to the W's, I called William Welch Gallery, and he answered the phone and he said, "Bill Welch." And I said, "I'm, student looking for a job. We're not hiring." He said, I said, "Well, why are you answering your phone? Shouldn't you be out painting?"
Ooh.
And I don't know where that came from other than desperation at that point, because if I didn't find a job, I was going to have to go home. So he invited me in the next day to interview, and he hired me, and he paid me $400 under the table every week all summer long, which was way more money than my friends were making. So I went from eating cucumber mayo sandwiches on the beach for $1 to going out to fine restaurants and buying bottles of wine and living like a tourist when I should have been saving my money.
You are listening to the Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
Hey, it's Jennifer. I wanted to take a quick break to remind you that you are worthy to have a seat at the table when it comes to money and your finances. Both me and my team at Platinum Wealth Management, want to meet you where you are, whether you're starting out, starting over, or have been investing for years. Reach out to us at platinumwealth.net or call us at 775-717-0001. We'd be honored to help.
And now, back to the podcast.
So, lesson learned. I came home that summer with not much saved, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't go back to college. I worked for my family business. I was kind of imprisoned to work for my family business. My parents had paid for 4 years of private school between high school and college, and were like, "It's your turn." I said, "I don't want to go back to school." Best decision I made. But money memories were elitism, extravagance, um, not status as much as just having a good time, traveling, being able to do the things you want to do, being able to buy the things you want to buy. And that was how I grew up with all this influence. So I've had to really change my ways, because recruiting is a cyclical income. It can be a good quarter or down quarter, a good month, a good week, a bad week. The income is not steady. So I've had to really change my ways.
Wow, no, that's quite the journey from all different facets. Well, what happened with the puppy? Did you keep it? Was it sold to that little girl?
Sold to the little girl because I already had Maggie. I already had my black lab, and my mother and father convinced me that this little girl deserved to have a puppy too.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Right, right. Hit me in the heartstrings.
Oh, well, that goes kind of right in hand from money memories to financial infidelities. what's a financial infidelity? And I feel like that's a big, scary, hairy topic for a lot of folks, right?
Yeah,
And it means
yeah,
different things depending on who you are. But what's a financial infidelity that you've witnessed or that you've experienced that you think others could learn from?
yeah, very good. This one's hard. I haven't seen a lot of this. I wasn't married to someone who racked up $80,000 of credit card debt secretly or something. I haven't had any real damaging infidelities, except recently. I did have one of our recruiters, after 2 or 3 years, left our company, and in doing so, she wrote me a long email that was really kind of nasty, I guess you could say. She wasn't leaving on good terms, and yet she wasn't an employee, and she averaged $175,000 income over those 3 years, which is pretty darn good income. And I think the infidelity comes where I'm business development with our company. I'm responsible for bringing in new clients, new projects, new roles that we can recruit for. And I weigh heavily on that to keep my team fed, so to speak, to keep them busy and having income. And that weighs heavily on me. And so her statement that she wasn't making enough money kind of hit me in the heart. Like, wow, I've been busting a gut for 8 years to build this company and to bring in all this business, that you can manage these projects and place people and make a good income. So that was kind of hurtful. I'm still processing that. That just happened in early March, and to be honest, I'm not sure what it feels to me, what my feelings are. Is it betrayal? Am I just
Mm.
hurt? Do I feel like her perceived failure is really my perceived failure? Did I fail her?
Mm.
Did you know? So it's not really about money. It's more about, you know, what are people going through? Is $175,000 a year income not enough? What is enough? She lived a very modest life, has a husband who's a nurse, has one daughter, doesn't live in an extravagant home. How can 175 not be enough? And I think that's the thing that's bothering me, is when do we stop pushing the goalpost further and
Mhm.
further? And when are we going to be comfortable and practical and be okay with what we have? When do we stop pushing that? So, yeah, so that was probably the most recent infidelity I could talk about, that makes me feel weird about money.
I mean, that's a great question though. Like I mean, the younger generation, I feel like looks at it so much differently than like our generation or the generations above us, right? I feel like they look at it as time and health are the highest indicators, right? Where they want more of a work-life balance, whatever that is. And it's not about the money. I've noticed from some of the younger generation, they'd rather,
Yeah.
live in a van and travel or be a nomad and work remotely or whatever that looks like. It's not about that, which is really fascinating to me because I was of the generation like you keep your head down, you work as hard as you can every single day, and that's what you do, and you just keep striving to move forward and move ahead and do better and different. So that's a deep question. Like where's the highest mountain? Like where is that for folks? Is there one? And why?
Yeah, and you're right about that. These more recent generations entering the workforce, it is a mix. I mean, some are money motivated, but they're far and few
Sure.
between. They're far and few between. They're looking for a culture. They're looking to fit in. They're looking to grow their skills, um, and they're looking for work-life balance. And all of those things rank a lot higher than a salary. So it's tricky, because when people leave a job and go to a new company, they're usually looking for more money, more freedom, lesser commute, more growth, a better boss. People go to work for people and leave because of
Totally.
people. That's a lot
Hmm.
of it. But you're right on about that. It's interesting to watch the psychology of money, you know, through the
Super
workforce.
fascinating. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
super fascinating. I think there's a whole different element too, like being an employee and being a business owner, which I mean, obviously you see, I see, right? Being an
Yes.
employee and again, I have a fantastic team, so I'm super, super blessed and lucky. And everybody looks at like their role as more of a lifestyle, right? Than just a work-life balance. And I feel like I'm terrible at work-life balance. Owning my company and doing the things, working in the business on the business, I'm awful at it. I'm always striving to be better, and I feel like I'm a work in progress. But I think there's a different kind of mentality many times from a business owner than somebody who's an employee, just simply because you're on all the time. This is your business, this is your brand, this is an extension of you as a person. So it's a whole different mindset to a certain extent.
It really is. And I came into the workforce just like that, working in a family business. My parents, they had a number of different businesses while I was growing up. They owned a liquor store, they had rentals, property management. But at the end of the day, my dad was a truck driver. He quit that to run the business, but then went back to it. He, retired a Teamster with a pension and benefits and the practical side of my dad. But when he was successful, he was a salesman for Electrolux vacuums. He was a salesman for Pitney Bowes. And when he was finding his way, he was a milkman and a taxi driver. But having money to support your family was always priority. And I think that might be the difference in today's generation is people aren't necessarily starting families as early. But there's definitely a difference between coming from an employee mindset versus an entrepreneur, business owner mindset. Not to say employees don't work hard, they do, but it's a different thing. Like I'll take a phone call at 8 o'clock at night. I'm not on a time clock.
Same.
I'm not on a time clock. So that's a great thing, and it's also a curse.
When it's a responsibility, like you said, your, role in doing what you're doing is trying to spoon fed, folks in your company to make it successful, to help them be successful. Really, it's a trickle down from you, right? To be
Yes.
able to continuously lift people so then they can lift people behind the scenes. And that's a big responsibility. It's a big
Yeah.
responsibility because you are trying to make sure everybody's mouths are fed along the way, but you're doing the best level of service you can do too.
Yeah. And it was hard in the beginning for me to get a new project and pass it to somebody else because for a couple of years I was by myself and I was used to, acquiring the project, working the project, recruiting candidates, putting it all together and seeing it to the end, seeing it right to the end. So it took a lot for me to be able to delegate that. And I'm sure you've experienced that yourself.
Yes, I'm nodding like profusely. Yes, yes, same,
Yeah.
same. Right. And I think it's just being like an A-type person too, wanting to make sure that everybody's doing their best, but you know that you're responsible for you. So, but there's only one of you as well, right? You can only do so much without a team. So,
Yeah, and you can only grow so much and you can only reach more people without bringing on more people, you can't reach more people. And that's the objective here. We want to reach more people. Our company has been an award winner the last 2 years for the Reno Gazette Journal's Community Choice Award for Best Employment Agency. And we also were honored to win the Northern Nevada Business Weekly Best in Industry Employment Agency last year. So we're reaching more people, and that's what I'm after. Who can we help? How can we get people out of this quagmire of job searching, applying and getting crickets, and your resume goes into the black hole? And it's quite painful for people to be job searching on their own. And there's, like I said earlier, a lot of anxiety about it. So
well, thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I
yeah,
appreciate it.
yeah, you're
So
welcome.
as we begin to wrap the conversation, I always like to ask, what are tips and or tricks that you use to utilize money differently in your own household?
Oh, save first. I take money right off the top and put it away. I know that's not really a cognitive way to do stuff, but that's how I do it. And learning to say no, going back to my grandmother's method of what's a want and what's a need. Um, and then being charitable. My husband and I are very generous people. We pick up the tab a lot. We help people with lots of things. My husband's a veteran, a disabled veteran, and he's helped a lot of people get benefits through the VA that wouldn't normally be pursuing that. They are injured and feel strong and, you know, um, don't want to go after a disability claim. There's some of that psychology, but You earned it. You served our country. So we do a lot of work in the community that helps people financially, and that's what I want to be remembered for.
Oh, I love that. That's so important, right? How do you give back? How do you make a difference?
Yeah, that's right.
Good. Well, Sue, thank you so much for making time today.
Yeah, thanks, Jennifer, for having me. It was really nice to see you, and I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Yes. And those of you watching and or listening, hopefully you'll join us in the next Platinum Talks Wealth podcast.
If you enjoyed today's podcast, Platinum Talks Wealth, please subscribe and share. For more information about Jennifer Rogers Markwell or Platinum Wealth Management, please visit www.platinumwealth.net. Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA and SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. The guest speakers and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Platinum Wealth Management.